So here we are at Bio in Boston. I'm with Josh Mandel-Brehm. He's the CEO of CAMP4 Therapeutics. Just give us a bit of an introduction to who you are, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Max. You nailed the name, so well done. So as Max mentioned, I'm the CEO of CAMP4 Therapeutics. At CAMP4, we use antisense oligonucleotides to increase the expression of genes. So I like to tell people, think about us as the inverse of Ionis and Alnylam, in the sense that we can make things go up instead of making things go down.
Okay.
And why that's important is it turns out that there's hundreds of diseases where you're missing healthy protein. And so if you can find a way to put healthy protein back in the body or teach your body how to do more of what it already knows how to do, that is make more protein, that could be a hugely valuable new form of medicine for a lot of different patients.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we were just talking about how you guys are so different to what else is out there. Just walk us through that.
Yeah, you know, one of the things about CAMP4 is we've always done things differently, not for the sake of it, but because we've had to. So, you know, many times in company creation, you see there's Nobel Prize winning science or there's a big step forward in innovation, CRISPR as an example, and you see many companies come up, which makes a lot of sense. CAMP4 is a little bit different in the sense that we had a technology that allowed us to essentially map cells, that is, go in and look at what's happening in the nucleus of cells, how the genome is making decisions to control its genes. But the question for us was really, how do you use that information to make drugs? And by working very closely with our founders, Rick Young and Len Zahn, what we discovered at CAMP4 is that there's a new category of RNAs called regulatory RNAs. So RNAs that come out of enhancer and promoters, the non-coding genome, that every gene uses to control its expression. So essentially, as Rick would say, Dr. Rick Young, you have to rethink the entire rules of gene regulation. And so that's really exciting for us, but the point is we're pioneering this new area of upregulation using ASOs at the same time that Rick and the field are pioneering gene expression. And so that's a little unusual. Typically companies come after that happens, but we've been doing it in parallel, and I think that's pretty exciting because as the science advances, we don't have to wait to make new medicines. By using antisense oligos, which are a great type of chemistry that have been around for many decades, we can actually make hay and start making drugs while still understanding the science as we go forward.
When you are that novel as well, what's it like talking to investors and how do investors react to that?
Yeah, so there's definitely an element, there's two things to think about. One is that it's important to really simplify the story. Not simplify to miss the details, but simplify to help people really understand what's most important, and then you can get into the details later. So, you know, as this is a newer field and has been, it's taken time to educate people on that. Some of the terms we use are not textbook terms, so we've had to build that over time. The other thing is, as you evolve as a company, you know, I started at CAMP4 with 5 employees. You know, now we're a publicly traded company, and so the types of investors we talk to evolve over time too, and how they think about the company and what's important to them. So the company matures, how we talk about our science changes depending on who we're talking to, and we're certainly in a world now where what we really care about is we think we can make medicines for diseases where there's no treatments and there's big opportunities, and I think that's really the punchline.
What a journey as well.
Yeah.
5 people to what you are now.
Yeah.
Just walk us through what that's been like.
Yeah, look, we've had to make, you know, I think all great companies in and outside of biotech have sort of life-saving moments, if you will, and have to make really hard decisions. And those same hard decisions become opportunities that help you become an even better company, and CAMP4 is no different. So our first iteration of the company, when it was founded in 2016-17, was using that mapping technology, but then also using small molecules. And we raised money around that, we did some partnerships, but we found that the combination of our technology with small molecules wasn't specific enough for the types of diseases we wanted to go after, those being rare genetic diseases. And so we shifted based on some of the biology coming out of Rick Young's lab, and it was kind of a daring moment for us. We did that in 2020, and we started using oligos to increase genes, and we haven't looked back since then. And since then, we've been able to really move from testing in a in vitro Petri dish setting in 2021 to now wrapping up our first clinical study, or close to wrapping it up in humans using new technology. I think that's pretty exciting, and it shows how quickly we can move with this type of biology.
That's awesome. How often do you actually sit back and go like, I know there's a long way to go, but look how far we've come, and be super grateful for that.
In this business, I have found there's more lows than highs, but you've got to turn them into opportunities. And we try and really savor the high moments. I started my career working at bigger companies, Genzyme, Sanofi, Biogen. And if you had told me that later in my career I'd be really excited about some exciting mouse data or primate data, I would have laughed. But those are great moments for us. When we see our technology can do something unexpected in a monkey, which should translate to humans, when we got our first drug approved to go into the clinic, when we put our drug into a human being and show that it was safe, I mean, those are incredible moments that we work hard to get to, and we certainly try and relish them. I like to say we take a day to celebrate and then we get back to work.
Yeah, nice. And then, well, like the culture piece, right? You've gone from 5 people, you've grown, you've become a public company. The company obviously evolves in some way. Like, how do you really map culture, define culture across the company?
Well, it's a really important question. I think every CEO thinks a lot about it for their companies. My view is culture is a set of actions and virtues. It's not values. I think people sometimes confuse that. And what I mean is values are things you write on the wall. Culture is a set of actions and how people operate day to day. And so we think very long and hard about, okay, what are the things that we do that make us us?
Yeah.
That's part of our culture. And what are the things that we aspire to do? So as an example, we do a survey every year where we ask the same question, which is, do we have a culture, and how would you describe our culture in one sentence? And the error bar should be pretty tight around that. We do that every year.
Yeah.
And so if you were to do that today, what you'd hear across the company is it's high science, it's fast paced, it's an extremely transparent culture, despite the fact that we're public. There's a lot of collaboration. And those are things that, one, we operate that way, and we try and build around that. Right?
Yeah.
So what are things we do? We have lunch for everybody on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Not just for the sake of having lunch, but because that brings people together, right? Because that's part of our culture. We operate in certain ways where, I'm just finishing up where for the next few weeks I'm having coffee chats with the entire company, but in small subsets, 5 to 6 people.
Nice.
Because when you're in a big setting, people don't necessarily want to talk, right? You got to get people talking. That's an element of our culture. And by the way, cultures can evolve. So as you asked the question, we've gone to 5 now to 50. What's changed? Well, there's some elements that haven't changed. High science, fast-paced, collaborative. Our transparency, how we communicate, how we develop people, that's shifted in terms of our culture. But we're very deliberate about it. And I think, as I've told my employees, which is, culture is not me telling everybody how we have to be, but it's also talking with them about how they want to be. And if you want to operate a different way, then you actually have to change your behavior. We can do that. But where culture really matters, of course, is when times are tough. When the tide goes out, you know who's skinny dipping. And so for us, it's like, that's when culture really shows up. And that's where the opportunities come. And I think this company has lived through some really hard moments, and not only lived to fight another day, but come out really stronger on the other side. So I think it's a very resilient culture, and one where the people are at this company, because as we talked about in the beginning, what we do is different.
Yeah.
We feel a bit like we're pioneers in that sense.
No, I love that. And I'm going to completely change the topic now, just because it is a big topic in the industry. Being public versus being private, especially in the current market.
Yeah.
I'll leave that question broad.
Look, so I'm fortunate enough that I've gotten to live on both sides of this now. So when we were private, I did 4 private fundraisers. What I can tell you is they were never easy. Not because people didn't believe in what we were doing or whatnot, but we had to prove to them what we were doing mattered. And at each step, that took time. And we got the investors we deserved, which were great investors, and they really are partners to us and helped us build this company. What I can tell you about the benefits of being private are you get more flexibility. So your cap table or your ownership is concentrated usually to major investors. They're on your board. You're having discussions with them in your board, but you're making those decisions together, and you could change them relatively quickly, but that's who you're answering to. That's who you're having the dialogue with. Now, when you're public, you have a lot broader set of shareholders. You're public, you have to earn it every day.
Yeah.
Every single day you have to earn it, and you have a scorecard every day, which is your share price. When you're private, you only get your scorecard where you raise money. So there's a psychological aspect to it. The one thing I'll say about being public, which I think is a massive benefit, and I say this having lived on both sides now, is being public offers you access to a broader set of shareholders and investors, and also different vehicles to raise capital, and a more efficient way to raise capital. Right? So fundraising becomes a bit more process oriented because public investors are looking at hundreds of things.
Yeah.
And they're not doing 3 to 4 investments a year. Private investors are. They're more concentrated. They take a lot more time. So a private fundraise can take anywhere from 9 to 12 months. That is a lot of work for you and your team. It can be a bit of distraction, but it's what you need to do. It's just the way the world works right now. Public investments don't work like that typically. It's a lot more efficient. So each of them has trade-offs. And I think we're, as a company, in the definite right place to be public. I think it's the right thing to us. And I think we just have to earn it every day. And I think that actually it's a benefit being public. And We understand the responsibilities that come with that, but we were private for 7 years, so it was time for us to take that next step.
Yeah, definitely. And what about what's next? What's exciting?
Yeah, so look, as I mentioned to you, I think what the most important, I have a lot of aspirational people and companies we look at, but if I just take one, we like Alnylam as one because we think what they did was really amazing, but more so, they showed that their platform can make more than one product, and that's what we're aspiring to do. So we have our first program in the clinic that's reading out, but we have our next program for a really exciting, and the first one's for urea cycle disorder. Our next program is for a rare disease called Syngap, which is a devastating disease with no approved disease-modifying treatments. It's a CNS disorder. And why I'm really excited about that one is if you just look at the data that we have and you look at these families, we're giving them hope. And so we badly want to get there. But then a lot of our technology behind that is going to be in the CNS. And so I think there's a lot of really great opportunities in front of us. I think in the next 2 years, we're going to have readouts coming, and there's going to be a lot of exciting data cards flipping over. And my view is that's when we're going to show the world that this technology works. And then I think things are going to really start shifting. That's when you start taking the next step as a company, where when you show something from a clinical perspective, you're now getting in rarefied air and you're starting to actually get more credit for what you're doing, and you can start to do other things as well. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. I think that's what we've been working for the past 7 or 8 years, and I think we're all excited to get there. We have more work to do. It'll never be fully linear, but I think these are the types of diseases where there's really nothing there. We can make a huge impact with our technology. It's uniquely suited to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Great, terrific.